It's time for you to move to the basement because my son is coming to live with us and he needs your room, my stepmom declared while eating the Christmas turkey. I cover the rent, the bills, and the food, I reminded her. The next day, I left without a word. Now she is begging me after they got an eviction notice. All right, Reddit, buckle up because this one's a doozy. I, 24 male, have been financially supporting my dad and stepmother for the past 3 years. Let me paint you the picture of this absolute shit show I called home. My dad remarried when I was 19 to this woman, Sandra, 45 female, who came with her precious golden child, Owen, 21 male. From day one, Sandra made it crystal clear that Owen was the center of her universe, and everyone else was just background noise. Dad's always been a people pleaser, especially after my mom died when I was 16. I think he was so desperate for companionship that he ignored every red flag Sandra threw up. And trust me, there were enough red flags to outfit a communist parade. The living situation started simple enough. Dad owned a decent 3-bedroom house in the suburbs. Nothing fancy, but it was paid off and had enough space for everyone. I had the master bedroom because I'd been living there longest. Dad and Sandra took the second bedroom, and Owen got the third. Seemed fair, right? Wrong. See, Owen is what you'd politely call a work in progress, and what I'd accurately call a complete waste of oxygen. Dude's 21 and has never held a job for more than 3 weeks. His resume reads like a comedy sketch. Fired from McDonald's for showing up high. Quit Walmart because the customers were mean, and got canned from a gas station for stealing energy drinks. But according to Sandra, he's just finding himself and exploring his options. Meanwhile, I've been grinding since I was 18. Started in construction right out of high school, worked my way up to a supervisor position, and now I'm pulling in decent money. Nothing crazy, but enough to live comfortably. Or at least it would be if I wasn't bankrolling 3 other adults. The financial arrangement started gradually, like most toxic situations do. First, Dad asked if I could help with groceries since money was tight. Sure, no problem. Then the electric bill became my responsibility. Then the water bill. Before I knew it, I was covering rent, utilities, groceries, internet, and pretty much everything else while Sandra and Owen contributed exactly nothing. Dad worked part-time at a hardware store, but his income barely covered his car payment and cigarettes. Sandra claimed she was between opportunities, which is rich people speak for unemployed and not looking. Owen was busy being a professional disappointment, but here's where it gets really fun. Despite me basically being everyone's sugar daddy, Sandra treated me like an unwelcome houseguest. I couldn't leave dishes in the sink for 5 minutes without getting a lecture about respect. God forbid I left my work boots by the front door. And the passive-aggressive comments about my girlfriend Emma were constant. Oh, Emma's coming over again? I hope she's not staying for dinner? Food is expensive, you know. Yeah, Sandra, I know food is expensive. That's why I buy all of it. The breaking point started building around Thanksgiving. Owen had been living with his buddy Tyler for about 6 months, which was honestly the most peaceful our house had been in years. No one eating all the food. No random strangers showing up at all hours. No dealing with his attitude. It was almost like living with normal human beings. But apparently, good things don't last when Sandra's involved. Owen got kicked out of Tyler's place right before Thanksgiving. Something about not paying his share of rent and bringing too many sketchy people around. Shocking, I know. So naturally, he came crawling back home with his tail between his legs and a sob story about how Tyler was jealous of his success. What success? The man's greatest achievement was getting to level 80 in World of Warcraft. Sandra went into full mama bear mode, acting like Owen was some war hero returning from battle instead of a grown man who couldn't figure out how to be a decent roommate. She immediately started making plans for his homecoming, and that's when the entitlement really ramped up. We need to make Owen feel welcome, she announced one evening, while I was trying to eat dinner in peace. He's been through so much. Through what? I asked. Learning that actions have consequences? Sandra shot me a look that could have melted steel. He's family. We support family. Right. We support family. By we, she meant I, and by support, she meant financially enable while being treated like garbage. The Christmas buildup was something else. Sandra went full Pinterest mom, decorating every surface and planning this elaborate holiday dinner. She bought Owen about $300 worth of presents with money she definitely didn't have. When Dad quietly asked how she afforded it all, she just waved him off. Christmas is about giving, she said sweetly. Besides, Owen deserves nice things. Meanwhile, my Christmas gift from them was a $15 gas station gift card and a lecture about being more grateful for what I had. The irony was thicker than Sandra's makeup. The week before Christmas, Sandra started making comments about the living arrangements. Nothing direct at first, just little hints dropped into conversation. It's so cramped with Owen back home. I wish we had more space for everyone to be comfortable. Some people just take up more room than others. I ignored it mostly, hoping it would blow over. But Sandra wasn't the type to let things blow over. She was the type to escalate until she got what she wanted. Owen, for his part, was acting like he'd never left, eating everything in sight, leaving messes everywhere, bringing random people over at all hours. The dude treated our house like his personal frat house. I'd come home from a 10-hour shift to find my leftover Chinese food gone, and Owen passed out on the couch with 3 of his equally useless friends. "Did you guys eat my dinner?" I asked one night. Owen didn't even look up from his phone. "Yeah, man, we were hungry. There's like crackers or something in the pantry. I worked all day and specifically saved that food for when I got home. Chill out, it's just food. I'll get you back next time." Narrator voice. He would not, in fact, get me back next time. But the real kicker was Sandra backing him up. When I complained about the food situation, she told me I was being selfish and unwelcoming to family. When I pointed out that I'd paid for the food in the first place, she said I was keeping score, and that real families share everything. Real families also contribute to household expenses, but apparently that logic didn't apply to her precious son. The housing pressure started getting more obvious as Christmas approached. Sandra began making comments about how my room was too big for one person, and how Owen really needed his own space to get his life together. She suggested I might be more comfortable in the basement. The basement, by the way, was an unfinished concrete cave with a space heater and a pull-up bed. It smelled like mildew and regret. But hey, at least it had a window that looked directly into the neighbor's garbage cans. "Owen is trying to turn his life around," Sandra explained during one of her campaigns. "He needs a proper environment to focus on his goals." "What goals?" I asked. "His goal to play video games 16 hours a day? He's exploring entrepreneurship opportunities." That was Sandra speak for, he's thinking about maybe starting a YouTube channel about gaming, revolutionary stuff. I kept shutting down the room-switching conversation, which clearly frustrated Sandra. She started getting more aggressive about it, making comments in front of Dad about how some people weren't willing to make sacrifices for family. Dad, being the conflict-avoidant king he is, would just mumble something about working it out and change the subject. The week before Christmas, I overheard Sandra on the phone with one of her friends. "I don't know what to do about the situation," she was saying. "He's just so stubborn and selfish. Owen needs that room, but he won't give it up. I mean, we've given him a place to live all these years." Given me a place to live? I was paying for the place they lived. The cognitive dissonance was stunning. Christmas Eve arrived, and Sandra went all out. She'd invited her sister's family over, which meant the house was packed with people I barely knew eating food I'd paid for, while talking about how generous Sandra was for hosting such a beautiful dinner. Owen was in his element, playing the role of the beloved son who'd overcome adversity to come home for the holidays. He'd put on actual clean clothes for the occasion, and was charming Sandra's relatives with stories about his business ventures and investment opportunities. I kept my mouth shut mostly, just trying to get through the evening, but I could feel Sandra watching me, clearly planning something. She had that look she got when she was about to make a scene, like a cat getting ready to pounce on a mouse. Dinner went smoothly enough. Everyone complimented Sandra on the turkey, which she accepted graciously, despite the fact that I'd bought it and Dad had cooked it. Owen regaled everyone with tales of his entrepreneurial spirit, while carefully avoiding any mention of why he'd moved back home. Then came present time. Owen opened gift after gift from Sandra. New gaming headset, expensive sneakers, a leather jacket that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. Each present was accompanied by Sandra's beaming smile and comments about how he deserved the best. My gift from them was a $20 Home Depot gift card, in front of all the relatives. "It's practical," Sandra announced loudly. "Since you're so handy with tools." The message was clear. You're the help, not the family. But the real show was yet to come. After presents, while everyone was settling in to digest and chat, Sandra stood up and clinked her wine glass. She had that fake smile plastered on her face that meant trouble was coming. "I have an announcement to make," she said sweetly, making sure everyone was listening. "We're going to be making some changes around here to better accommodate our growing family." My blood ran cold. I knew exactly where this was going. "Owen has decided to move back home permanently to focus on building his career," Sandra continued, beaming at her son like he'd just announced he was curing cancer. "And since he's going to need proper space to work on his business ventures, we're going to need to reorganize the sleeping arrangements. Here it comes." Sandra turned to me with that saccharine smile that didn't reach her eyes. So we've decided that you'll be moving to the basement room. It'll be perfect for you. More privacy, your own space. Owen really needs the master bedroom for his work. The entire room went silent. Dad was staring at his plate like it held the secrets of the universe. Owen was trying not to smirk. Sandra's relatives were looking back and forth between us, like they were watching a tennis match. I sat there for a moment, letting the audacity of the situation sink in. She was kicking me out of my room, in front of a house full of people, on Christmas Eve, while I was paying for everything. No, I said simply. Sandra's smile faltered for a second before snapping back into place. I'm sorry? I said no. I'm not moving to the basement. The fake sweetness in her voice turned sharp. Now, sweetie, we've already discussed this. This is what's best for the family. When did we discuss this? Because I remember you making suggestions, and me saying no. Sandra's face was starting to turn red, but she was trying to maintain her composure in front of the relatives. Well, we're discussing it now. And as the mother of this household, I think I know what's best. That's when I lost it. Mother of this household? I stood up, my voice rising. You mean the household I pay for? The rent I cover? The bills I handle? The food I buy that you and your son eat? The room was dead silent now. Sandra's relatives were staring wide-eyed. You think because you married my dad, you get to kick me out of my room? For your unemployed son who got evicted from his last place for not paying rent? That's enough, Sandra snapped, dropping the sweet act entirely. This is my home too, and I won't be disrespected by some ungrateful child. Your home? Your home. I was fully yelling now. Show me one receipt. Show me one bill you've paid. Show me one grocery run you funded. You contribute nothing to this house except drama and entitlement. Dad finally spoke up, his voice weak. Maybe we should discuss this privately. No, I cut him off. Let's discuss it right here. Since Sandra wanted to make this announcement in front of everyone, I turned back to Sandra, who was practically vibrating with rage. You want me to move to the basement? Here's a counteroffer. I move out entirely. See how long you last without my income. You're being dramatic, Sandra said, but her voice was shaking now. You're not going anywhere. You'll move to the basement and that's final. I looked around the room at all the shocked faces. Sandra's sister looked like she wanted to crawl under the table. Dad was still studying his plate. Owen was starting to look worried for the first time all evening. Actually, I said, surprisingly calm now, I think you're right. This conversation is over. I walked upstairs to my room, leaving behind a dining room full of stunned relatives and one very angry stepmother. I could hear Sandra trying to do damage control downstairs, explaining to her family that I was going through a difficult phase and that young people these days don't understand responsibility. The irony was so thick you could cut it with a knife. I spent the next few hours in my room, listening to the relatives leave one by one and the house finally quiet down. Around midnight, Dad knocked on my door. Can we talk? He asked softly. I let him in. He looked exhausted and older than his 52 years. Look, son, I know Sandra came on a little strong tonight. A little strong? Dad, she tried to kick me out of my room in front of a house full of strangers. On Christmas Eve, Dad sat down heavily on my desk chair. She's just worried about Owen. He's had a rough time lately, and she thinks having his own space might help him get back on his feet. Dad, I pay the mortgage on this house. I pay the utilities, the groceries, the internet, everything, and she wants to move me to the basement so her unemployed son can have my room? You don't pay the mortgage, Dad said weakly. You help with expenses. I pulled out my phone and showed him my banking app. Dad, look at this. I transfer $1,800 to your account every month. Your mortgage is $1,200. Where do you think that extra $600 goes? Dad stared at the screen for a long moment. I didn't realize you were covering so much. I've been covering everything for 3 years. Sandra and Owen contribute nothing. Less than nothing, actually, because they eat twice as much as any normal person should. Dad was quiet for a while, processing this information. Finally, he looked up at me with tired eyes. What do you want me to do? Sandra's my wife. Owen is her son. We're a family now. What I want you to do is stand up to your wife when she tries to kick your son out of his room. What I want you to do is recognize that I'm the only reason you're not living in a cardboard box right now. Dad flinched at that, but he didn't argue because he knew it was true. Sandra's not going to drop this, he said finally. She's got her mind made up about the room situation. Then she's going to be disappointed. Dad left after that, and I spent the rest of Christmas Eve planning my exit strategy. I'd had enough. 3 years of being treated like a walking ATM while being disrespected in my own home. 3 years of watching Owen contribute nothing while being treated like a prince. 3 years of Sandra's entitled attitude and manipulation. I was done. Christmas morning was tense. Sandra was still pissed about the night before, but trying to play it off like nothing happened. Owen was quieter than usual, probably realizing that his meal ticket might be walking away. Dad was tiptoeing around everyone like he was walking through a minefield. Sandra made one more attempt at manipulation during breakfast. "I've been thinking about last night," she said in her fake, reasonable voice, "and I realize we maybe didn't approach the situation the right way. But the fact remains that Owen needs proper space to build his career, and you'd probably be more comfortable with more privacy anyway." "My answer hasn't changed," I said, without looking up from my eggs. "Well, what if we made some adjustments? Maybe we could finish the basement properly, make it really nice for you. New carpet, better lighting, a proper bathroom." "With what money?" I asked. "The money I give you every month that barely covers the bills as it is?" Sandra's jaw tightened. "We could figure something out. Take out a small loan maybe. A loan you'd expect me to pay back, no doubt." "You're being unreasonable," Sandra snapped, dropping the sweet act. "This is about family, and you're acting like it's all about money." "It is about money, Sandra. It's about the money I earn, that I contribute, that keeps this house running. And it's about respect, which you've never shown me." Owen finally spoke up. "Look, man, I don't want to cause problems. Maybe I could just stay in the basement." Sandra whirled on him. "Absolutely not. You deserve better than that basement. You need proper space to focus on your goals." "What goals?" I asked again. "I'm genuinely curious what these mysterious goals are that require my bedroom." Owen mumbled something about starting a streaming channel and maybe getting into cryptocurrency. Sandra nodded like he'd just announced he was running for president. That's when I knew for sure I was done. These people were delusional. I spent the next few days apartment hunting, found a decent one-bedroom place about 20 minutes from work for $900 a month. Nothing fancy, but it was mine, and I wouldn't have to deal with entitled stepfamilies or ungrateful stepbrothers. I didn't tell anyone about the apartment, just quietly put down the deposit and arranged for a move-in date of January 2nd. I figured I'd give them through New Year's to come to their senses, though I wasn't holding my breath. The pressure campaign continued all week. Sandra kept making comments about how selfish I was being and how real families make sacrifices for each other. Owen started acting like the room switch was already a done deal, talking about how he was going to set up his office space and asking if I needed help moving my stuff to the basement. Dad tried to play mediator, suggesting compromises that all basically amounted to me getting screwed while Owen got everything he wanted. Maybe I could share the master bedroom with Owen. Maybe we could convert the garage into a room for me. Maybe I could just deal with the basement for a few months while they figured something else out. Every suggestion involved me making sacrifices while Owen made none. New Year's Eve was the final straw. Sandra threw a party and invited all her friends over. She spent the entire evening complaining about how difficult I was being and how stubborn young people were these days. She painted herself as the long-suffering stepmother trying to keep the family together while dealing with an ungrateful stepson. Her friends ate it up, making sympathetic noises and sharing their own stories about difficult children and stepchildren. I was the villain in Sandra's narrative, the selfish kid who wouldn't make room for his struggling stepbrother. Meanwhile, Owen was in the living room with his buddies, already talking about how he was going to redecorate his new room and planning where to put his gaming setup. He was acting like it was a done deal. That night, after everyone left and the house was quiet, I made my final decision. I wasn't going to announce it or make a big scene. I was just going to leave. Let them figure out the bills when they didn't have me bankrolling their lifestyle anymore. January 1st, I spent the day slowly moving things to my car. Important documents, sentimental items, clothes I'd need for work. I left the furniture and big stuff because I didn't want to tip them off. Just took what I needed to survive for a few days. Sandra and Owen were too hungover to notice much. Dad was at work. Perfect opportunity. January 2nd morning, I got up early and loaded the last of my essential stuff into my car. I left my house key on the kitchen counter along with a note. "Since you've made it clear that this isn't my home anymore, I've decided to find one where I'm actually wanted. Good luck with the bills. Your former ATM." And then I left. Didn't say goodbye, didn't have a dramatic confrontation. Just walked out and drove to my new apartment. My phone started blowing up around noon when they realized what had happened. First Dad, panicked and confused. Then Sandra, angry and demanding I come back immediately. Then Owen, suddenly very concerned about family unity. I ignored them all day, focusing on getting my new place set up. It felt amazing to be in a space that was actually mine, where no one could demand I give up my room or move to the basement. The voicemails were entertaining though. Sandra's evolved throughout the day from angry demands to bargaining to full-blown panic. By evening, she was calling every 10 minutes. This is ridiculous. You need to come home right now. Okay, maybe we can work something out. We can discuss the room situation. Please call me back. We need to talk about this like adults. Fine, you can keep your room. Owen can stay in the basement. Please, we need you to come back. We can figure this out. Dad's messages were more desperate than angry. Son, please call me back. We can work this out. Sandra's willing to compromise. Funny how quickly people become willing to compromise when their meal ticket walks away. I finally answered Dad's call that evening. Where are you? He asked immediately. Sandra's worried sick. I'm at my new apartment. You know, the one I can afford because I have a job. You can't just leave like this. We're family. Family doesn't try to kick family members out of their rooms, Dad. Family doesn't take advantage of each other financially for years while showing no appreciation. Sandra was just trying to help Owen get back on his feet. Sandra was trying to give her son my room while I paid for the privilege. There's a difference. Dad was quiet for a moment. What do you want us to do? How do we fix this? You don't fix this, Dad. This is fixed. I'm not coming back. I'm not paying your bills anymore. You and Sandra and Owen can figure out how to be adults and support yourselves. But the mortgage, figure it out. Get jobs, cut expenses, do what the rest of us do when we can't afford our lifestyle. I hung up after that, felt better than I had in years. The calls continued for a few days, getting more desperate each time. By day 3, Sandra was leaving sobbing voicemails about how sorry she was and how she'd never meant to make me feel unwelcome. Too little, too late. The real panic set in when the bills started coming due. See, I hadn't just been paying the mortgage. I'd been covering the electric, water, gas, internet, cable, groceries, and basically everything else that kept their lives comfortable. Dad called on January 8th, his voice tight with stress. The electric company called. They're saying our payment is overdue. Probably because I'm not paying it anymore. What are we supposed to do? Pay it yourselves? With the money you earn from your jobs? My paycheck barely covers my car payment and insurance. Then get a second job. Or Sandra could get a first job. Or Owen could contribute something other than dirty dishes and attitude. This is serious. They're threatening to shut off our power. Then pay the bill, Dad. It's not complicated. He hung up after that, probably to go grovel to Sandra about how to solve their sudden financial crisis. The next few weeks were a masterclass in watching entitled People Face Reality. My phone was constantly buzzing with updates on their deteriorating situation. The internet got shut off first when they couldn't make the payment. Owen apparently had a complete meltdown when he couldn't play his precious video games. Sandra called me crying about how cruel I was being to punish them like this. Then the cable got cut. Then the water company sent a shut-off notice. Then the electric company actually followed through on their threat. Through it all, Sandra kept calling and begging me to come back. She'd dropped all pretense about the room situation and was promising me anything I wanted if I'd just resume paying their bills. You can have the master bedroom, she sobbed into one voicemail. Owen doesn't mind the basement. We've worked it all out. Please, we know we made mistakes. We'll do better. Just come home. Your father is having chest pains from the stress. Do you want that on your conscience? The guilt trips were impressive in their creativity, but I wasn't budging. They'd made their bed. Now they could lie in it. In the basement, if Owen didn't mind. The final nail in the coffin came in February. Dad called, his voice barely above a whisper. We got an eviction notice. I wasn't entirely surprised. How far behind are you on the mortgage? 2 months. We tried to make payments, but without your help. Without the money I was giving you, you mean? We can't lose the house. This is where your mother and I lived. This is your childhood home. That hit lower than I expected, but I pushed through it. Then you should have thought about that before you tried to kick me out of my room. Sandra's willing to apologize. Publicly. In front of whoever you want. She knows she was wrong. Dad, it's not about apologies anymore. It's about the fact that you're all adults who should be able to support yourselves. I'm not your personal bank account. But what are we supposed to do? Get jobs. All of you. Cut your expenses. Sell stuff you don't need. Do what everyone else does when they can't afford their lifestyle. Owen has been looking for work. For 3 weeks? After 3 years of unemployment? Color me unimpressed. Dad was crying now, which broke my heart a little. But I couldn't save them from the consequences of their own choices. Please, he whispered. We need help. You need to help yourselves. I'm not responsible for supporting 3 other adults who don't want to work. After I hung up, I felt a mix of emotions. Guilt, sadness, anger, relief. But mostly, I felt free. For the first time in 3 years, I wasn't worried about anyone's bills but my own. My new life was simple and peaceful. I worked, I came home to my own apartment, I cooked my own food, and ate all of it myself. I didn't have to listen to Sandra's complaints or watch Owen drain the household resources while contributing nothing. The eviction proceeded as scheduled. Dad called to tell me they had to be out by the end of February. We found a place, he said. A 2-bedroom apartment across town. It's not much, but it's what we can afford on my salary. What about Sandra and Owen? Are they working now? Sandra got a part-time job at a grocery store. Owen is still looking. Translation. Sandra finally faced reality and got a job, while Owen was still playing video games and making excuses. How are you guys managing financially? I asked, genuinely curious. It's tight, really tight. Sandra's paycheck plus mine covers rent and basic utilities, but there's not much left over. Welcome to how most people live, Dad. I know you're angry with us, but losing the house, it's been hard. I imagine it has been. Maybe now you understand why I was frustrated about supporting everyone while being treated like garbage. Dad was quiet for a moment. Sandra wants to talk to you. She's been asking me to call you for weeks. What could she possibly have to say? She wants to apologize. Really apologize, not just say sorry to get you back. Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet them for coffee. Neutral ground, public place, easy escape route if things went south. The Sandra who showed up barely resembled the entitled queen who'd tried to kick me out of my room 2 months earlier. She looked tired, stressed, and about 10 years older. Working retail had apparently been a wake-up call about how the real world operated. Thank you for meeting us, she said quietly, avoiding eye contact. I'm only here because Dad asked. You've got 15 minutes. Sandra took a shaky breath. I want you to know that I understand now. What I put you through was wrong. You were supporting our family and I treated you like an inconvenience. Go on. I was so focused on Owen and what I thought he needed that I ignored what you were already doing for us. You were being the responsible adult, and I punished you for it. This was more self-awareness than I'd ever heard from Sandra, but I wasn't ready to forgive 3 years of entitlement because of one conversation. What changed your mind? I asked. Sandra's face crumpled a little. Living without your support. Trying to make ends meet on minimum wage and your father's part-time salary. Realizing that everything I took for granted, the comfortable house, the full refrigerator, the paid bills, all of that was because of you. And Owen? Is he contributing anything now? Sandra's jaw tightened. Owen is adjusting to the new reality. It's been difficult for him. Translation. Owen was still useless, but Sandra was finally seeing it clearly. He got a job at a pizza place, Dad added. Part-time, but it's something. Probably the first honest work Owen had done in his life. Amazing what financial desperation could accomplish. Look, Sandra continued, I'm not asking you to come back or support us again. I know I burned that bridge, but I wanted you to know that I realize how wrong I was. And how much we owe you. You owe me about $50,000, I said matter-of-factly. That's what I calculated I spent supporting you guys over 3 years. The number hung in the air like a lead balloon. Sandra turned pale. We can't pay that back, Dad said weakly. I know, I'm not expecting you to. I'm just making sure you understand the actual cost of what I was doing. We sat in uncomfortable silence for a while. Finally, Sandra spoke up again. Is there any chance, in the future, that we could try to rebuild our relationship? Not financially, she added quickly, just as family. I considered this. Part of me missed my dad, missed having family around, but a bigger part of me remembered 3 years of being taken for granted and disrespected. Maybe, I said finally, but it would take time, and it would require major changes from everyone involved. What kind of changes? Dad asked. Owen would need to become a functioning adult who supports himself. Sandra would need to continue working and contributing. You'd both need to understand that I'm not your emergency fund or backup plan. We understand, Sandra said quickly. Do you? Because 3 years of treating me like an ATM suggests otherwise? Sandra flinched but didn't argue. I'm working now. I'm paying my own way. I know what it's like to struggle financially, and I'll never take anyone's help for granted again. And Owen? Owen is learning, Dad said diplomatically. Owen is 21 years old. He shouldn't still be learning how to be a responsible adult. You're right, Sandra admitted. I enabled him for too long. I thought I was helping, but I was just making him dependent. This was the most honesty I'd ever heard from Sandra about her precious son. Maybe getting evicted had been the wake-up call they all needed. Here's what I'm willing to do, I said, after thinking for a minute. In 6 months, if Owen has kept his job and you've both proven you can support yourselves, we can try having dinner together. See how it goes. That's more than we deserve, Sandra said, tears in her eyes. Yes, it is. I left the coffee shop feeling conflicted, Part of me was glad to see them facing reality and taking responsibility, but a bigger part of me was still angry about 3 years of being used and disrespected. 6 months later, Sandra called to check if my offer was still good. Owen had apparently kept his pizza job and even gotten a promotion to shift supervisor. Sandra was still working at the grocery store and had gotten a small raise. Dad was working full-time again at a different hardware store. We're not living comfortably, Sandra admitted, but we're making it work without help. Owen even pays us rent now. That was genuinely surprising. Maybe there was hope for the kid after all. We met for dinner at a modest restaurant, their choice and their bill. The difference in everyone's demeanor was striking. Sandra was quieter, more thoughtful. Owen actually participated in conversation instead of just grunting responses. Dad seemed less stressed than he had in years. "How's the new apartment?" I asked. "Small," Dad said with a laugh, "but we're managing. It's actually nice having less space to maintain." "And Owen? How's the working life treating you?" Owen actually smiled. "Better than I expected, honestly. I like having my own money, being able to buy stuff without asking anyone. The work sucks sometimes, but it's not as bad as I thought it would be. Plus, he's saving up for his own place," Sandra added, and I could hear pride in her voice. Actual pride in her son doing something productive, not just existing. "Yeah, I want to get a studio apartment by the end of the year," Owen said. "Be fully independent, you know?" This was a Owen I'd never met before. One with goals and work ethic and actual plans for the future. "That's great," I said, and I meant it. The evening went better than I'd expected. We avoided talking about the past or the money situation, just caught up on current events and future plans. For the first time in years, it felt like we might actually be able to have a normal family relationship. As we were leaving, Sandra pulled me aside. "I know I can never fully make up for what I put you through," she said quietly, "but I want you to know that losing you as a son was the biggest regret of my life. Not the house, not the money, losing you. It wasn't a complete reconciliation, but it was a start. These days, we have dinner once a month or so. Sandra's still working and seems to have genuinely learned from the experience. Owen moved into his studio apartment last month and is talking about going back to school part-time. Dad's happier than I've seen him in years. As for me, I'm still in my one-bedroom apartment, still working construction, still completely fine with paying only my own bills. I've got a girlfriend now, Emma from work, who actually appreciates what I do instead of taking it for granted. Sometimes people ask if I regret walking away from my family when they needed help. The answer is no. They didn't need help. They needed a wake-up call. Enabling their entitled behavior for another year or two wouldn't have helped anyone. Sometimes the best thing you can do for people is let them face the consequences of their choices. Even if those people are family. Especially if those people are family. The house ended up getting sold to cover the back mortgage payments. Dad said it was actually a relief to not have that financial burden anymore. Sandra's working full-time now at a different grocery store, making decent money and finally understanding what it means to earn your keep. Owen still works at the pizza place, but he's also doing some freelance graphic design work on the side. Turns out when you're not spending all day playing video games, you have time to develop actual skills.